So, our last speaker of the day is Max Petzold, Director of Swedish National Data Service and Professor in Biostatistics. And your talk is different. So I will... Swedish National Data Service, an infrastructure for research data. Very welcome, Max.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm mainly a statistician, you can say, and I was entering this position 3 years ago, more or less exactly. Could be in 3, 4, 5 days, something. It's 3 years ago, and the aim why putting a statistician in that position is mainly to make this kind of service more researcher orientated. I mean, all infrastructures tend to be quite closed after a while, so it's good to replace people from time to time to open up the perspectives. And that's the heading that was lost here, that I was writing in the program, that the title was broadening the perspectives inch by inch, and trying to really open up this kind of structure. So the Swedish National Data Service has a history of 35 years, not with that name, but the function has been there, and it originates from social sciences and then expanded into humanities and into medicine, and now expanding to more or less everything but inch by inch. It takes a long time. Like Maggie described, I mean, it's really hard to put up standards for just one area. But we need some structure that is covering all of Sweden, all research areas, whatever, but built on collaboration with like ICOs and other experts in the fields. So this one, the National Data Service, is mainly sharing and preserving data in different ways, and we are really in a transitional phase that we are expanding. We are also building a distributed network with expertise and storage. And I mean, there are some, of course, some easy reasons to understand why you should take care of your data. I mean, this is one of the, actually a real picture. Someone lost the laptop, and crucial scientific data, many years of research was lost. And this is kind of a typical situation. I mean, I would say most, perhaps not in megabytes, but most data sets in Sweden are definitely not really under control. It's in different laptops, in different computers here and there. Then the super large centers like MAX4 and these might have more data than all these small files, but that's another issue. So what we are trying to do is building up a system for very systematic sharing of research data. And there is a lot of development. I mean, more or less all areas are developing, and this area is definitely developing. There are different things that drives the development. This is one of the typical examples. Something else happened, so you had the Zika outbreak. People were collecting data, and there were attempts to develop antibiotics. And then there were a lot of problems that different researchers didn't share the data, so it was kind of halting the development of the vaccines. It took much longer time than it could have taken if you had systematic sharing of data. And this is a very special example then. I mean, normally when we talk about sharing, it's after the project is closed. That's the most common situation, that someone have collected data, done the research, and then would like to share the data. Then you have like Maggie and this kind of infrastructures that are collecting data continuously, and of course they also try to share more or less continuously. And then you have this kind of emergency situations where you need to be very fast, but that's kind of a very special situation, I would say. But it has been driving the development quite much. So if you look at the big funders like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they hand out about $4 billion per year. They definitely require that if you get money from the Gates Foundation, you need to, I'm trying to find the words, you need to share it. Yeah, somewhere it's written here that you need to share it, but then it's a lot of definitions of what data should you share and all this. Another big actor is the Wellcome Trust in England that hands out about £2.5 billion pounds per year, and they also require, if you get the money from us, you need to share. And some special situations like the Zika outbreak, you need to share it immediately. So there are some strong forces here, but you shouldn't forget that a lot of researchers would like to share the data by themselves. It's very different in different disciplines. I normally mention archaeology as one of the good examples in terms of sharing. It's quite obvious that if you do an excavation, you can't really come there a second time and do the excavation. You need to share your data to make it open. So they have a long tradition, and they also have a good system of citing the use of data. So if you use someone else's data, you need to cite it. And if you read the CV of an archaeologist, you might find that my data has been used for this and this and that project. Other disciplines, when they share the data, like medicine, where I'm mainly active myself, the common way is that you are a co-author. So that's another way of sharing data, not systematic, but another way. And perhaps not really the best way, because you shouldn't be co-author all the time whenever you give your data to someone. You need to be a part of the project, I would say. But that's the way it works. And another force is, more than this voluntary sharing then, another force is the journals. So this is an example from the PLOS journals. Within medicine you have the PLOS and you have a large number of other journals, of course. All the PLOS journals require that you cite the data and that you share it, you upload it somewhere in a repository. So what happens is that there is a kind of disclaimer here. So this data was shared by the Swedish National Data Service. So there is a link here, and then you have the data object identifier, the persistent one that should be lasting for until we destroy ourselves or something like that. Anyhow, this is really one of the core parts of the FAIR principles, that you should have a data object identifier. Persistent identifier is the more general term. So this is what it looks like. In this case, this Daniel Slunge, he cites his own data, so make it available, but it could also have been someone else's data that he had been using and referring to. But what the journals normally require is that you upload your data in a repository, so you can't keep it on your own hard drive somewhere. You need to upload it. So it should hopefully be under FAIR principles, but the FAIR principles are not really defined. And that's very important that it's done in a systematic way. So, I mean, research projects, they come and they go. They appear and they die after a while. People are getting retired and all this, so you can't really rely on individuals. You need to have some kind of organized form. So to get the DOI, you need to ask a repository that is accepted as one of these issuers of DOIs. Other forces, this is partly in Norwegian and Swedish, but we have the Horizon 2020, where they have started asking for data management plans that are really the core part of the data management, that you should have a plan from start up to the sharing of the data. So systematic data management with the aim to make it available. It's not really introduced to 100% yet, but it's coming. So that's why we need to have this kind of infrastructures to really make the researchers able to follow what the funders and the journals ask for. So, and that's very important to remember that repositories like the Swedish National Data Service, we are not really coming up with the requirements ourselves. We are trying to provide a service to the researchers so they could follow these requirements that are stated by someone else. The Norwegians, they have had it for a number of years, I think 15 years, something, perhaps a little bit longer. Finland introduced it a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I think. The Danes are also having more complicated system. Some of them, of their national funders are requiring that you share your data and some are not requiring. And in Sweden it's also a coming development that they will start asking for that. So we need to be prepared, and working with the repositories, the good thing is that the number of researchers that would like to share the data at this stage is quite limited. So there are, of course, but the majority are not really sharing their data. So we have time to build up something that works more broadly and is following the FAIR principles in a good way. Then the Commission had a recommendation coming out just some few days ago. This is in a series of recommendations, so it's not a surprise. There is a document that is like 6 years old that has exactly the same name, and this is an update. And the Commission, they say that data management planning becomes a standard scientific practice in early in the research process. This is really a core issue in this recommendation. Another is that there should be incentives. So reward system, education and training programs for researchers. European Open Science Cloud, EOSC, should be a trusted open environment. So trusted, then it should be, have a certification. EOSC should be a federation, so we need infrastructures like the ICOS, like the Swedish National Data Service. EOSC is not really building up a new system, it's really trying to be a federation of resources. There should be academic career systems within data management, so they're really trying to lift it to another level. There should be necessary funding. That's quite important. And you can always talk about funding. It's a big issue. I was a part of the Wellcome Trust for 5 years in London. I was in one of the small committees just handing out 500 million Swedish crowns per year, so that's counted as small money in UK. But anyhow, 1/5 of this money were aimed for data management, actually. So 400 million Swedish crowns for research, and the last 100 for data management and being able to share your data. So there are money, but this is a recommendation for the countries within the European Union to really make it possible. There should be concrete objectives and indicators to measure progress. So the countries are asked to come up with this kind of indicators. And of course, this is a European discussion, and it's also a global discussion. And the unique identification, so the persistent identifiers, is also a very core part of the EOSC work here. So what we are doing, the Swedish National Data Service, we call ourselves 2.0 now to be up to date. We are trying to become a part of the EOSC, and actually I had a discussion with the head of the infrastructures at the Research Council in Sweden this morning when on my way here, Björn Halleröd, and the question to Björn was how to make Sweden prepared to have a list of EOSC contributions. So we need kind of preparatory discussion, what should we contribute with, and then come up with a list at the end. And then, of course, I would like the SND to be a part of that, but there should also be a lot of other parts. So essentially what we are doing is that we describe studies, research data in a web catalog. So this is the findability. We provide access both national and then, of course, international. So we export the metadata. So not the data, of course, but the metadata is exported to a lot of other repositories. And we should enable dissemination of data for secondary research. So, I mean, that's the core aim. But we're also giving support on data management, so helping the researchers and helping the other infrastructures to do proper data management. This is definitely very different in different disciplines and different types of data. And we arrange a lot of different events. It's important to remember that, especially within the Nordic countries, and Sweden is one of these, that most of these services are free of charge. And it's quite different if you go to a lot of other countries where you actually have to pay for this kind of service. But here we still have it free of charge, and that's due to the Research Council and the universities that are investing in this kind of work. So this is what it looks like. It's like a library. You can search for data. Of course, there is an advanced search also with filters and all this, but essentially you can write what you are looking for here and you get different data sets coming up. There is a standard vocabulary, so you can not write whatever you like, but you can write something and you get something completely different. No, but you get the terms are translated into a lot of different lists of keywords. So it's the same kind of search function as Spotify you are using, actually. Then, of course, we need to help with the data management. So we have some documents here, and then we do training. The describing and uploading data is, of course, very central for us. So it's both to find the data, but we also need data coming into the system. And this is, of course, a big challenge to make the researchers upload good data. And then we're running a lot of other projects and things here. We're also part of the RDA, of course, working with the Research Data Alliance, which is really one of the biggest global actors here. And then we are also a member of the CESTA, which is an ERIC for social sciences. So the consortium that owns SND is now the University of Gothenburg. And in Gothenburg, we have kind of core competencies in humanities, social sciences, and public health. So when we are talking to the researchers, we have people with this research training in the office in Gothenburg, doing these discussions, following what happens in the different research areas, and trying to be up to date. KI, Karolinska Institute, is working with life sciences, so that's medicine, but all perspectives of medicines. Lund, and this is quite interesting, when I did my writing, I forgot the ICOS, which is definitely a part here. I saw it when I was sitting here. But anyhow, it's material sciences, some Max 4, population-based research, which is more public health. And then we have the Maggie, also as one of the experts in the collaboration here. The University of Agricultural Sciences, SLU, Environmental and Climate Data. So you see there is definitely an overlap, but it's just positive that we have this competence in different places. All researchers know that one area is so super broad, so one researcher can't really have all that knowledge. Stockholm University, spatial data, which is not really a research area, but it's a very special form of data. So you need to have competence how to preserve, how to share, how to document this kind of data. University of Umeå, register-based research. So it's broader than medicine. It's more social science and that kind of area. But data that is really alive, so increasing over time, working with registers, connecting it to other data that you collect. And then University of Uppsala, sensitive data. That's a really big issue here in, all countries, of course, but we have the personal identifiers that makes things a little bit more complicated. So this is the universities that own SND. And then we have a network of universities that are in the collaboration, so utilizing this platform. And that's more or less all of the, it's all of the large universities, and it's more or less all of the mid and small universities. We have not all of the very smallest ones. There are some that are really, really small, but they are kind of hang-arounds to this collaboration. Let me see, I might be at the end. Yeah. So the last picture, that what we are moving, it's not just that we are moving, trying to cover all the disciplines inch by inch. We are also changing the work, how the work is, this way. This is one. How the work is organized. So 4 years ago, it was 100% this organization, that we had one office, and that's in Gothenburg, and the researchers contacted that office. I need help to upload my data, to document my data, to manage my data in different ways, or I need help to get data. Now we are building a system where the SND is more the kind of back office, that we have data access units at each of these 27 universities. And that's not within the SND, actually. It's built by the different universities. So they have a local facility that is able to help the researchers to do proper data management and all this, to get a better mindset in terms of open data, open science. And then, of course, the SND collaboration is supporting all these local units. And then we are aiming for a joint storage, but the joint storage is definitely federated storage, and you could also add on other persistent storages. So we are building kind of federated storage instead of having just one small one. So that's what is happening on the more national level. And I think this is what will happen in most countries. We are a little bit actually in front of the other ones, you can say. And of course some other will take another path, but we are working this way. Thanks.
Questions?
Yes. Oh.
Thank you for the thorough overview. Archives always have to make difficult trade-offs between acquiring data and curating data. And I was hearing more about getting people to self-archive than about investments in curation. How many archivists do you employ, and what proportion of the overall endeavor is invested in curation and migration and so on?
I mean, for the moment, I mean, in the old days, some couple of years ago, and also partly today, we have, in total, we are 25 people in the office, and then it's about 12 data curators among these that have really been helping the researchers. But what we are preparing now is much of an expansion, that we need to build a system that is sustainable. And no one would like to put in money to have like 400 data curators in one place. So what will happen is that it needs to be that kind of competence at the different universities. The funding is definitely different from place to place. The good thing is the EOSC that tells that there should be money for this. It's a recommendation, but it's definitely a recommendation to the governance. So hopefully there will be data creators at the different universities. We will never have a super large office at one place. I'm very sure about that part, but I'm not fully sure about how we will be able to help the researchers in the best way. We need money, definitely, or the universities need money. So no clear answer, but it's one of the core issues in this development. Yeah. Förkastat.
Okay, so my name is Kalle Åström. I come from the math department. So we heard from you, but also earlier today, that you're trying to get researchers to actually deposit the data. Is this a problem? I would think that at some point it would be the other way around, that you're afraid that too many researchers would try to deposit too much data.
We hope that there will be too many. But today it's definitely not, we don't have any queue. I mean, there are data sets coming more or less every day to SND, to the collaboration here. But it's definitely not a lot of data coming, I mean, compared to what is produced in the country. It's a kind of fraction of fractions. So the good thing with that is that we definitely have time to build up a system that could support larger number of researchers. But if there were 1,000 researchers coming in a couple of weeks, we would definitely not have the capacity to serve them for the moment. So, no. So the big problem is the influx of data. We are delivering like 6,000 data sets per year, but we are only getting some few hundreds per year. So, yeah.
More questions?
Yes. So I'm from particle physics, and we have like new activities starting now, looking for dark matter, which is perhaps a little bit interdisciplinary, because astronomers are also looking into this. But the thing is, it's also international, right? And so the data sets which are now basically the result of simulation, not only are they 300 terabyte, like that's what we need now, and we can't really we're talking to people from Lundmark. They don't have it sitting there in the corner just up for grabs, right? So there is no 300 terabytes sitting around for one researcher. It's not even 1,000, just one researcher needs 300 terabyte like next week or something like that, right? So it's not promptly available. Secondly, this is a collaboration with the SLAC, the Stanford Center in the US. And it's not very straightforward. How do they get access to eventual data facility, which we will have here in Sweden? There is no immediate answer to that either. SNCC, for instance, SUNET, okay, may provide the bandwidth, right? But the authorization is not quite clear. So would SND somehow assist into this kind of questions? And this is just one case, which I know names, right? And there are probably many more like those in Sweden. So do you have any kind of generic framework in mind?
I mean, just to start with the large data, that's definitely one of the issues here, even if, it's important to remember that, I mean, this collaboration is not built on one storage. It could actually handle more or less whatever storage, but the important thing is that they are persistent or long-lasting in different ways. Another important aspect is that the data should stay with the owner. So it should stay under control of the university that owns the data. But that could be in a federated solution. So it could be at SUNET or some other supplier. Then the more the legal things here. You have different license levels here. So what we are trying is to build up a kind of framework, standard contracts, more or less, that could handle a part of it at least. But we will never really be able to handle all of it. And one important part is also when we have information about individuals, that you can't make data freely available. You need to have a permission to get the data. And that's another issue here, of course. And I think it's not easy to find all solutions. For that part, we definitely have a solution. But regarding ownership and the different levels, if you think about art, you have a lot of problems with the ownership. You can't really share research data within art sciences that easy. And in some areas, it's super easy to share it. So we have all variability, but and we don't have the solution to everything. But I think working together should definitely make it easier to find good solutions over time, not tomorrow, but coming years at least. And then working in a collaboration, you also have the capacity to follow what happens internationally and globally. So yeah, so it's well recognized, but it's not really solved everything.
Thank you so much again, Max.